I didn't want to wake up and be 40 years old and call another man my boss. I'm just not. And I asked my wife before we got married, I said, as long as I was like actually doing it and actually working and I wasn't just being a bum, but if we went bust and we had to live in a van down by the river, would you stay with me? And she said, absolutely. She didn't hesitate. So the flex to me is not that stuff. The flex is when I can pull out my phone and I get the screen time notification on Sundays that iPhones give you, and I was under an hour a day. That's my flex. Use your 9 to 5 to leave your 9 to 5. If that's what you want to do, use it to leave it. The right way is to get the business first, to do the business first. Because you're like content, all it is just another way to advertise your business. If you're not advertising your business with content, then you've got an art project. That's the one thing that'll make it easier for you. Put it on easy mode, is you got to solve a 3 a.m. problem. And 3 a.m. problems are...
I can see the enemy approaching the battleground. Hear the drums pound like a thunder sound loud. I gather up my crowd to prepare them for what's coming. We've been summoned.
What's going on? Welcome to Alpha Dad Consulting, a show where we focus on helping dads become better family leaders. I am your host, G. Vidal, and today we're going to dive into a major part of family leadership, which is being a provider. And more specifically, how to be an effective provider through entrepreneurship. And in order to do that and have that conversation, I had to invite a very, very special guest. He is not only a good, solid man, a devoted husband and father, but he is also a successful entrepreneur who has helped hundreds of men and women to start their own solo remote businesses. With 1 million followers across multiple social media platforms, he's devoted his career to giving people the tools that they need to become financially independent so they can focus on what really matters, which is family, community, and autonomy. He is the owner of the Simple Business School community, the Save Your Sons brand, and the Clients Through Social Incubator. I want to welcome to the show, Harrison Schenk. What's going on, brother?
Gee, man, it's my pleasure, dude. I've been looking forward to this one. I always love when we get to chat. And when you asked me to come on, it was an absolute slam dunk no-brainer, dude. I'm excited.
Yeah, dude, same here, man. All right, bro, let's dive in. So you and I both, we work with dads all the time. We work with men that come to us, and especially to you. They tell you, hey, man, I want to start a business, right? And a lot of us have that, right? And we have that inner voice. We're sitting at our jobs, and we're sitting in this cubicle, and we're like, man, I hate this job, but I do it because I love my family. I need to provide. This is the only thing I've ever been good at, right? Or I went to school for this. I just found out you went to law school. I didn't even know that about you.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? So we're going to get into that. But, we get to this point, man, where we hear this inner voice, like you should start a business, you should get into entrepreneurship. But we don't do it because, it's risky or whatever it is, right? But you, my friend, you got that voice. You were there. You were in that position. And you answered the call. You said, all right, I'm going to dive in. And I want to know what was the catalyst to that, man? Like, what made you just jump into entrepreneurship and start the business, start moving down that path? And what were your reasons for sticking it out? Because it is not easy. It's not easy.
It's not, I like to say it's a classic example of it's not easy. It should be simple, but it's not easy. And for me, man, there were so many things. I think I come from a long line of entrepreneurs, which really a lot of us do. If you go back a couple hundred years, like most of the men that are our relatives, our great-grandfathers, great-great-grandfathers, they were out there providing, eating what they killed. So more of us have that in us than we think. And for me, it was my dad, my granddad, my great-granddad, both granddads. Like, it was from all sides. And I think it sprung from a lot of different things. I went to law school, like you mentioned, and knew early on that I didn't like to color inside the lines. I wasn't the guy that was gonna suck up to a partner and wear a suit every day, and it just wasn't for me. Plus, I don't know how many lawyers you know, but if you get around smart lawyers, like it's a tough game, and you got to fight. And I just saw the future. I was like, this ain't really it for me. So I went straight into entrepreneurship. I went and joined a startup, an early stage startup. Mm-hmm. I was the third employee. and grew that. It was a sports marketing startup. Grew it from when I joined. I mean, we were at a few 100,000 in revenue, and we got up to 12 million in 4 years.
Wow.
And
That's awesome.
And it was a events management company. Is really what it was. Yeah. And so I joined in 2016. Then in COVID hit. And the entire, I mean, it was outdoor sporting events, dude. Like, you ain't gonna do that in early 2020. It just wasn't happening. And so I fired my entire team on the same day, 5 people in one day. Yeah. And that was like, dude, that was tough. And then right around that same time, our first son was born. And right around that same time, I started posting online about how I felt being a new dad. And so all this stuff was happening, and out of nowhere, it was a Twitter account back when it was Twitter, and it just exploded. I didn't expect it to. I did it completely by accident, but I turn around 6-7 months later and I've got 50,000-60,000 followers. And I'm like, there's gotta be a way to make this work, turn this into a business. And that launched me into the journey of a lifetime, which was, you know, I'd been in the entrepreneurial world in a startup, but I wasn't really the founder. I wasn't really the guy that had it all on his shoulders. I had a lot on my shoulders, but not like a founder. And I was like, you know what, this is the next challenge. And I was getting another thing that's really important to me that I think is important. This will resonate with a lot of guys is I didn't want to wake up and be 40 years old and call another man my boss. Mm-hmm. I just didn't. And if you do, and you don't have a problem with that, bless you, man. More power to you. For me, for better or worse, I had a problem with that. And so it was like all these things were happening at the same time. I was like, you know what? I'm going to really try to figure this out. So for about 16 months, well, really about 2 years, I did both. I worked at my company and I taught myself online entrepreneurship simultaneously. And fast forward to summer 2022, so 2 years after I started the Twitter account, I had more than replaced my income through my online business, and I knew that I could do it consistently, and I felt comfortable making that leap. Mm-hmm. And I went and talked to the CEO, who was my boss, and I told him what was happening, and the rest is history. And that's been 2 years now, 2.5 years.
Man, dude, that's awesome, bro. Yeah, and that's, you know, one thing that I want to point out there in that story too is that you were building on the side, right? So you were still using your main gig to kind of sustain and do that, because what I see a lot of guys do is they'll go gun ho, man, and they'll just, you know, they'll quit the job, and then that usually is what causes stress in the marriage and the kids and the pressure, like everything you feel as a family leader, right? So with you, man, I know that I tell my wife all my crazy ideas when it comes to entrepreneurship and all that. So you coming to your wife and telling her, hey, like, I'm ready to go full time with this thing. What was that conversation like for you?
It was honestly, man, I feel so lucky because she's been so freaking supportive and just totally ride or die. Yeah. But what you said, dude, that's an important piece, because when I was doing both, I was working harder than I've ever worked in my life. No question. Yeah. But I also slept like a baby because I knew that I had this safety net, and I knew that I had my salary, and I was doing fine at my job. I was keeping up. I wasn't slacking too bad, a little bit, but not too bad. and so I knew that I had that, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, that safety net, which honestly, once you do make that leap and you say, I'm on my own now, that's the first thing that goes away. And I still feel it, dude. Like, I still feel every now and then, like, oof, what if you play the what if game, and like, what if this stops working, or what if this goes away, or whatever. And so I would encourage guys to use your 9 to 5 to leave your 9 to 5. If that's what you want to do, use it to leave it. And just know that the trade-off you're going to make is that you're going to be putting in more hours. It ain't going to be forever, but you are. I was doing an extra 4 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I had my 9 to 5, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night, and then 4 hours a day on the weekend. For 16 months, I did that with no days off. Yeah. And a lot of guys do more. I could have done more. I didn't, because I was like, you know, this isn't really the point, is to make this like insane. I didn't want to be working 80 hours a week. That was never the point, and that's never my goal. But it was a lot. It was a lot. And when I talk to guys now and they're like I talk to a lot of guys who are early on in the journey, just I like meeting guys and talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, look, be honest with yourself. If you're going to do this, you need to give yourself 2 to 4 hours a day. 2 to 4 hours a day. And I can tell instantly the guys that are going to make it and the guys that aren't, because I was talking to a guy earlier today, actually. And I was like, look, man, this is like, I'm being real with you. At the minimum, 2 hours. At the max, but really probably 4. And he's like, I don't know if I can do it. I'm like, bro, then don't do it. Don't do it. Because don't lie to yourself and think you can just spend 30 minutes a day on a side business and replace your job. It's not going to happen. It's just not. You can spend 30 minutes a day on a side hustle and make an extra couple thousand bucks a month if you're smart.
Yeah.
But if you really want what you and I value, geez, like that real autonomy, that real, like, let's get there. It's just going to be more than that. And people need to understand. And the trade-off is you sleep really well when you got the dual incomes. And I also want guys to see that. So
the self-doubt that still creeps in, right? Even now, right? Because, I mean, you have success, you have a bunch of clients, you have a bunch of testimonials, man, and we still get that self-doubt, that inner voice that, because like you said, you don't have the fallback of like having that check come in every 2 weeks, right? And it's the golden handcuffs that gets us where we're there. So how are you managing that? Like, your mindset wise, how are you managing that? And how are you managing your time so that, because this is another thing, two components to this question is, how do you turn off the entrepreneurship mind, man? Because I feel like that's hard. Sometimes my wife has to like snap me back in, because I'll be at the dinner table and I'm thinking about an idea, a client or something. And she sees me zone out and she's like, hey babe, what about, she's asking me about like food or something. Right? And I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. Like, I'm snapping back in, dude. So how do you manage that, dude?
Oh, I do the same thing, man. It's constant. It's constant. That's honestly one of the ways I managed it, is starting the school.
Okay.
That was one of the reasons I did it.
Yeah.
And I also have joined a couple other like mastermind networking communities, whatever, because I just can't turn it off, bro. I can't. It's all I think about. It is totally the obsession of my life, for better or worse. And if I don't have an outlet to, like, that's why I come on podcasts and talk to guys like you, because I just need to talk about this stuff. If I don't, then I'm up there ear staining my wife, and she's like, dude, like, we got to work. We got to figure out.
We got laundry to do.
Yeah. There's like 3 loads of laundry, and the kids are screaming. And what are you talking about? Your new ascension process. I don't need to hear about that. So that's one way, is just find other people who you can, there's my big boy right there. Hey buddy, daddy's on a phone. Daddy's on a podcast. Can you go upstairs and see mom?
This is real right here. My daughter would have jumped in here and was like, yeah, this is
authentic.
This is what the freedom is like.
Yeah. But yeah, dude. So I needed that. I needed some place where I could go and let off that steam, because otherwise it is going to be a distraction, and it is going to be something that you can't turn off. But I think that's a good sign. Like if like, you need that certain level of obsession and certain level of insanity, because if you don't have that, what are you going to do when you start failing? Because you're inevitably going to start failing, or you're going to have mistakes and stumbling blocks, and you're going to screw up, or things are not going to work the way you thought they're going to work. And you're going to have to change what you're doing, or you're going to have to do more of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, like for me, there's no way I'm ever going to go back to a traditional job. I'm just not. And I asked my wife before we got married, I said, as long as I was like actually doing it and actually working, and I wasn't just being a bum, but if we went bust and we had to live in a van down by the river, would you stay with me? And she said, absolutely. She didn't hesitate. I used to ask that to every girl I dated. And that's when I knew. I was like, all right, this is a good one.
She's a real one.
Yeah. She didn't hesitate for a single second.
That's awesome.
And that's what it is for me, man, is I don't think I try not to turn it off. I just try to give myself outlets, so that if I just need to talk about this stuff with somebody, I've got a lot of places that I can go and get it out of my system, so that I can then go be present with my kids, and I can sit at the breakfast table. I can cook up some sausage and eggs and sit down there with them while they eat it and talk about whatever random thing they want to talk about, and not be 1,000 miles away, because I've built in this system of release valves for myself. Yeah. And that's the best thing I know at this point.
Yeah, I like that, man. Yeah, I have to do the same thing, because I have a hard time turning it off, man. Turning the idea generator up here that just doesn't shut off. So one of the things you mentioned with respect to input of time, right? When you're working a job and then you're going in and trying to put, some guys you've talked to, like, oh, you got to put at least 2 to 4 hours, right? And some guys are only putting like 30 minutes, or, hey, like, I'm just going to rock a weekend and hopefully I become a millionaire by Monday, right? Yeah. And what do you think about this whole influencer market, man? That is, because I feel like social media and this whole influencer market, this, everybody, become an entrepreneur because you're going to be rich tomorrow. And, all these guys that are out there telling, quit your job and fire your boss and this and that, and they make it seem like it's like this glorious thing, right? But dude, it's like you said, it's not easy. It is simple, very simple principles that you need to follow to make a business work. They haven't really changed throughout the course of history. All the business, like the principles are still the same.
That's it.
But this influencer market that's out there, the social media, the guy in front of the Lambo that's telling you like, oh, you get that he rent it, right? Yeah. So like, can you speak on that, man? How have you not gotten yourself drawn into that? Because for me, what it seems like with the conversations that I've had with you, you are more like family oriented. You want time, freedom, and autonomy. That is way more important to you than any type of materialistic gain or like, pursuit that you're going after. So where do you draw those lines, and how do you not fall prey to that like influencer market and all that's going on out there?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple things to hit on with that. So the first piece is what you just said. And to me, the Flex is not a fancy car. I don't care about cars. I've never been a car guy.
Yeah, same here.
We got a minivan. We got a Chrysler minivan 2023. I love that thing, man. I'll drive that thing till the wheels fall off. But so the Flex to me is not that stuff. The Flex is when I can pull out my phone and I get the screen time notification on Sundays that iPhones give you, and I was under an hour a day. That's my Flex. That's what it is for me. And it's I go through my camera roll and I see all the pictures I have with my kids. And we, like last night, my screen time will be higher because last night I sat down with my older boys and we just looked at old videos from when they were littler for like 45 minutes. Yeah, and they're like, look at that. Like that's why I do this. That's why I do it. And I think whatever your motivation is, like if your motivation is a lot of money, that's fine too. But what I would caution guys against, I think, is what I've started calling the creator myth. And I fell victim to it. I fell prey to this too. But there's this idea that if you just go out and you get a big following, it's like step 1, grow a following. Step 2, ? Step 3, get rich. And I think that's what I see people getting sold and bought into. And it's even worse now on X, dude, because people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to get ad revenue. I'm going to get monetized and I'm going to be making $8,000 every 2 weeks, just like from my tweets. I'm like, no, you're freaking not. You're just not. It's not going to happen that way. The most I ever made from X ad revenue in a month is like $500. And it's nothing. It's peanuts. And I have a big account. Yeah. Good luck getting as big as me. Good luck. So it's just not the right path. And that's why I teach. Like, so a lot of people will come inbound to me and be like, bro, like, I want to grow a big account like you. I want a big following like you. And my first thing I always say to them is, that's not what I do. That's not the right way. The right way is to get the business first, to do the business first, because you're like content. All it is just another way to advertise your business. If you're not advertising your business with content, then you've got an art project. And if you want an art project, that's fine too. I'm an artist. I'm a musician. I've been a musician my whole life. So if that's what you want, that's fine. But don't conflate the two. Don't think that this art project is going to make me millions, because there's no actual offer. There's no actual value. There's no actual thing that people want to buy that you can provide that is valuable enough to be worth more than the money that people pay you. If you don't have that, then you're just making an art project, which again, totally fine, but go into it with your eyes open. And so what I teach people is, let's figure out the business first. Before you even think about writing a tweet, before you think about making a YouTube video, before you think about recording a reel, let's figure out what we're going to sell and go try to sell it. Let's go try to sell it right now, right this second. And that's what I teach to every single person. And a lot of people are like, their heads start spinning. But that's also why people get results so fast when they work with me, is because I'm like, dude, we're not gonna optimize your Twitter bio. We're not gonna do that. I'm not gonna give you my content templates right now, because none of that stuff matters if you don't have something that people want to buy. None of it matters. And let's figure that out first. And then the good news is, once you understand, well, I can do that. Usually it's a service. That's what I like selling, service-based businesses. I can perform this service, and more people than not feel like it's worth more than they pay me. Now you've got something. And the good news is, now the content's really easy. The content's so much easier because you're not trying to imagine what people want. You're not trying to think about, well, maybe I'll write a book in 3 years and be a millionaire from that. No, you won't. But you're instead you're like, oh, I could do this thing that people value. And now content is a way for me to advertise the fact that I can do this thing. That's the right order of operations. And that's where I think so many people get led astray. And I did it too, bro. I mean, from August when I started the account, my first social media account, to the first time I monetized it in June of 21. So whatever that is, 9 months, 10 months. I had no idea what I was going to sell, but I was still spending hours a day making content. Yeah. And yeah, my audience was growing, but when I turned around and tried to sell that audience, I didn't really have anything that they particularly wanted. And so I was in a really unfortunate position that I had to dig myself out of, that took a long time and a lot of grind and a lot of pain that I could have skipped if I had done it the way that I teach now. And that's why I'm such a big believer in forget about the freaking content until it's time to advertise. You wouldn't go wide with $1 million ad campaign if you didn't know that people wanted your clothing brand. You wouldn't do that. So freaking why would you spend, that's all content is advertising. It's free advertising, but you pay in time. So why would you do that if you don't have any idea that you can provide a service or a product to people or to a business that's more valuable than the money they pay you? Why would you waste that time and go into it that blind? Instead, flip it, figure out what you can do first that people value, and let the content serve the business. Don't try to build a business on the back of some content that you made.
But Harrison, I need to build my website.
Oh my gosh.
I need to go to GoDaddy and buy my domain and build my website first and make it look nice and pretty before I start this business, and I'm going to take 3 months to do that. Optimizing social media profiles, right? So, I mean, dude, that was one thing in working with you, because for those of you listening, I've worked with Harrison, man, one-on-one, and he is phenomenal at keeping things very, very simple. And I was falling prey to that very same thing, thinking that I had to dial in all these other, the website and this and that. And man, you're overcomplicating it. Just, simplify it by saying, well, what can you do for somebody else? What problems have you solved in your life that you can solve for somebody else that is valuable to them? And you test it. Can you talk about validating that idea, validating your business idea? There's a guy right now listening to, they have a business idea. How do they go and validate and find out if somebody's going to pay for this?
Well, the first thing I'll say is almost everything works. Almost. Yeah. Now, I always caveat that by saying, if you go out on the side of the road and scoop up a dead raccoon and try to make G's roadkill stand, that's probably not going to be a business. Probably not. But aside from the ridiculous, almost everything can work with the right effort and the right consistency. But there's a huge spectrum of what I call the easy mode, hard mode spectrum. And so what I usually try to get guys to do first is let's try to land ourselves closer to the easy mode spectrum, closer to the easy mode side. And I also caveat by saying it's never easy. It's always hard. But why would you make it harder than it has to be? Mm. There's easier businesses relative to harder businesses. It's still going to be hard. So why would you choose to start off over here on the hard mode side? And that's step one, is and there's some rules around that. If you sell something that's really inexpensive, that generally makes it harder. If you sell something that people have never really heard of and don't understand, that makes it harder. If you try to invent a market and create demand and nobody else is selling what you're selling, that's a sign that it's going to be harder. And there's a bunch of them that we go through, and I'm like, yeah, because I ask guys like, what do you want to do? And they'll tell me their idea. I'm like, that's got these hard mode elements. It's got 1 or 2 easy mode elements, but 5 or 6 hard mode elements. Let's see if we can slide up the easy scale. And what makes things easy?
A mindset coach.
yeah. Oh man, that's hard mode.
Yeah.
But we've talked about this too, dude. Like the funny thing is, if you're a coach, which is a great, but coaching changed my life. I paid $5,000 for a coach in 2022, and I credit it for 80-90% of the success that I've had since then. And I still invest in coaching. I'm always going to invest in people that have been, there's millions of people farther ahead than me. I want to leverage their mistakes. I want to compress the time it takes for me to get to where they're at. And the best way to do that is to have them in your corner and talk to them. But if you're a coach, you wind up, a lot of it is mindset coaching, because a lot of it is breaking these beliefs that people have and break it and changing the way people think about things. But you can't market it as mindset coaching, because nobody is out there in the middle of the night waking up at 3 a.m. saying, man, I wish I just had a better mindset. If only my mindset was better. And if you want to be a coach or you want to sell some kind of service-based business around coaching, consulting, you have to solve those 3 a.m. problems. That's the one thing that'll make it easier for you. Put it on easy mode, is you got to solve a 3 a.m. problem. And 3 a.m. problems are, I'm 50 pounds overweight. You never stop thinking about that if you got 50 pounds to lose. Every time you walk in front of a mirror, every time you go up the stairs, every time the humidity outside changes and your knees start hurting because you're too heavy, you think about that all day long. If you are in a job you hate and you want to get a new job, that's a 3 a.m. problem. If your marriage is falling apart, that's a 3 a.m. problem. So you need to first find those. And selling business to business is even better, because business owners have a lot of 3 a.m. problems, and they usually have more money, and they're used to spending money to solve those problems. So there's more options that you have. But the best thing to do, if you can charge more money and sell it more easily, is if you find a problem that is burning, that hurts, and you can solve it in a way that'll save them time, heartache, and frustration. So that's the first thing I try to get guys thinking that way is, let's not make it harder than it has to be. It's already going to be hard. I don't lie to people. Like, there's going to be things that are hard, but we can choose to slide up the spectrum a little bit and make it a little bit easier. And why the heck would we voluntarily make it hard mode?
And one of the things, coming from like the online business coaching space, right? Because we're in that, we're like embedded into that, and we love it, but there's also some bad apples in there in terms of like, the digital course market has also shifted, right? You see that shift now. People are looking for more one-on-one type of support, program, cohort style supports. So right now, the guy that's thinking to himself like, maybe I should create a course, or maybe I should do this. Like, where do they start, man? Where would he start in terms of like step one, right? Like the first few steps that they could take to start not only validating their offer, but actually starting to create that business.
The very first thing they should do is try to sell it one-on-one as a service.
Okay.
Validate it. So like, let's make an example. So say you are I actually know people that do this. So you're gonna make a course. I know guys that sell these courses for $5,000 on SEO optimization. So you're going to go to local service-based businesses and you're going to say, I'm going to make you rank higher on Google, which means you're going to get more traffic. And then I'm going to tack on an AI appointment bot that's going to help you schedule the thing. So if you want to make a course that teaches other guys how to go do that, or even teaches business owners how to do it themselves, which would be a great thing, as you say, you spending a couple hours a day learning this stuff, you can close more appointments, get more traffic, get more bookings. That's fine. That's great. But I would first want to see that you validate it and you can deliver it one-on-one first. So go to a freaking business owner and just have a normal conversation like a normal human being. That's what I teach. It's fine. Like, I call it Dream 100. A lot of people, you might have heard that term, but like list out 100 people who you're like, these guys would benefit if I did my thing for them, and just freaking talk to them. Just have a normal conversation with them and be like, look, I'm going to be real straight up with you. One of the things I'm putting together is business. It's brand new. But what I think it can do is help capture more leads onto your website, because it'll help you rank higher, and then it'll capture traffic so they don't bounce off, and give you a way to follow up with them really easily. I don't know how much I'm going to wind up charging for it, but let's say if it got you to a point where it was adding a few $1,000s a month to your business in bookings, you want to do your research and understand what their acquisition costs are now, if you can, or what their lifetime value of a customer is now, if you can. But you go to them and say, like, I don't know what I'm going to ultimately charge for it. I just want to get some reps under my belt and prove to myself that I can do it. So would it be cool if I set this up for you free of charge? If you love it, all I'd ask in return is that you think about making a testimonial for me, and then we talk about what it would look like to pay me to keep doing it. And you have that conversation 40, 50, 60 times, you're going to get a couple people to be like, you know what, man, sure, shoot, let's do it. And now you're moving. Now you're rolling. And so you do it, you get some results, you get some testimonials under your belt, you get some people paying you to do it. It doesn't take long, 2-3 months from day one to get there. And then you have a decision to make. Do I want to continue? Do I want to turn this into a full service agency where I do everything for them? Or do I want to be more in the educational space where I teach people how to do this and they go and execute it? And that's a great place to be in. There's a lot of pros and cons on each side. It really depends on you and your goals and what you want to accomplish. But I would say the first thing is just go try to get someone to try it. Go try and sell it. Go try and sell it. And in the very beginning, you don't need a website, because you're telling people, like, dude, I'm just doing this for the first time. They don't expect you to have a website. And now, once you get going, yes, you need some presence so that when you are sending 1,000 cold emails, they Google you, they see that you're real and legit. But at the very beginning, all that stuff's a waste. You just need to have real conversations with real people and offer them a chance to try you out in a way that's really risk-free. Prove to yourself you can do it. Prove to the market you can do it. And then you go do all the other stuff. So that's how I tell everybody to start. That's my philosophy. And it works out. It works out. And that's what I'm going to keep doing.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, dude. It's brilliant because, yeah, I see a lot of people just overcomplicate it, man.
Oh my gosh.
They really do. I've fallen prey to this for sure, man. It took a bunch of like just knucklehead conversations with you where you're like, dude, no, man, no. Think about it like this, dude. And I appreciate it so much, man, because it's helped a lot. You know, one of the things that you mentioned, and I've seen you kind of do this even with yours, because you have a very popular account called Save Your Sons, right? A social media account. And that was kind of the inception, what you were talking about earlier, where that grew a lot of the following and a lot of the traffic and eyeballs that you got to your stuff, right? But you started that as an anonymous account. Like you weren't front facing, right? You weren't showing your face or anything. It was just, hey, like, and it was, a lot of people talk about all these different tactics and strategies to grow on Instagram. A lot of your stuff was like text based, and it's like carousel slides of like, here's a 50 list thing of like 50 lessons you want to give your son, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very unorthodox for growth on Instagram, because everybody's telling you to do reels and all this other stuff. And you were killing it with these carousels and all these posts. And so you've grown, but at a certain point you did a shift where now you're putting your face out there and you're not anonymous anymore. You're putting yourself out there. And I remember a conversation that we first had, man, where I was telling you about Apogee, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about how important it is to put at the forefront of your offer what you were talking, a 3 a.m. problem, something that is painful, something that calls out your ideal client, so that they say, okay, cool, that is my problem. So you got my attention, right? And we went and we looked at the Apogee site, right? And we were like, hey, man, this is not calling out a specific avatar, right? And sorry, Matt and Tim, if you're listening or watching this, but but one of the things you said is like, yeah, but they have Tim Kennedy everywhere, bro. Yeah, they have like, he's like everywhere on that website, his pictures everywhere. So that's like brand, man. That's a whole nother level, right? And can you speak to that, the power of personal brand, and why, even if you are just getting started and doing everything, and you don't need a personal brand to get started, but why it is sort of the ultimate game that you want to play?
Building the personal brand.
Yeah.
I think first thing is that falls in. That's a perfect example of everything can work. Everything can work. Yeah. And I hadn't chatted with those dudes. I respect them, and I think it's great what they're doing. And I know a lot of guys like you who are part of it, and they all speak so highly of it. So
it's awesome.
Absolutely. I recommend it because my friends recommend it. But they're doing some things on hard mode. They just are. Yeah. But they're also making it a lot easier on themselves by leveraging the incredible trust that comes with a personal brand. And that to me is one of the main reasons I switched. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm a pretty private person. I'm actually really introverted. I like having conversations like this, but if I'm in like a room talking with a bunch of people, like a party or something, like, bro, give me 30 minutes and I'm done. I need to go sleep after that. So that was a big part of why I was like, I don't want people coming up to me. I don't want to be recognized. Like, whatever. Nobody's really going to recognize you. Unless you're like real famous, which I'm nowhere close. But to me, it was, I want to put this on easy mode. And then there was also a big shift in just what I was interested in. I didn't really catch the entrepreneurship bug until I started doing it. And when I caught it hard. And so any sort of content that didn't somehow tie back to that, like, I still feel trapped in a lot of ways because I've got this massive audience and like less than 1% of them think of me as a business guy. They think of me as this fatherhood account that posts memes and good threads and whatever. And so when I do talk about business, a lot of them get like whiplash and like, wait, what are you doing, bro? I'll still get comments be like, shut up, meme man. You're supposed to be posting memes. Why are you talking about this? Why are you talking about this stuff? Which is another reason that I tell guys to get the business right first, because you don't get into that situation. But it reflected a change in just what I was interested in. And it was always going to be inauthentic if I'm not talking about stuff that I actually really am passionate and care about and I'm thinking about all the time. And my business content, I think, is way better than the fatherhood content, which I think was good too. But I think my business content is better because I'm just I'm like just freaking into it, dude. And I think that comes across. But so it was a little bit of that. But then also I wanted to transfer up the easy mode spectrum. And the best way to do that is trust. The best way to do that is trust. And I'll give you a quick anecdote, a quick story, illustration of what I mean. So imagine you're sitting in, this is what I tell everybody when they're like, why is personal brand so important? Why is trust building so important? Imagine you are sitting in your living room and you hear the doorbell ring and you go to the front door and it's a complete stranger, somebody you've never seen before in your life. And they start talking to you and they say, hey man, I'm out here selling solar panels. I want to set up a meeting about how I can save you money on your energy bill. 9 guys out of 10 are going to slam the door on that guy's face. That's a hard job. Selling to strangers, that's selling to cold traffic. Yeah. Selling to cold traffic. And it's hard, especially door to door, especially something like solar panels where everybody knows the deal. If I want solar panels, I'll freaking buy them. You're not going to sell me on it. Like, come on, dude. I know the deal. But imagine, same scenario. You're sitting in your couch in your living room. You hear the doorbell ring. You go up to the front door, and it's not a stranger this time, but it's your next door neighbor who you go to church with, who you see in the driveway every day. Your kids play in the backyard. You go get the mail at the same time. You have small talk. You see him on the commute to work. Your wives chat all the time. It's your next door neighbor. And he says the exact same thing. Hey man, I'm selling solar panels. I want to see if I can set up a meeting with you to talk about saving money on your energy bill or your heating bill or whatever, your electricity bill. You're going to take that meeting. You are going to take that meeting. And why? The only factor that is different is that you trust this guy and you don't trust the first guy. You know this guy and you don't know the first guy. And that's what happens when you build a truly personal brand online. If I see some account that's like ancient secrets of masculinity and their profile pictures like some wolf and they're like, and they're talking about here's my thread on, like, I don't know who you are. Yeah. I don't know anything about you. You might be the man. You might really have it going on. I doubt it, but maybe you are, but I don't know. And until I know that, there's no way that I'm going to begin to trust you. I don't care how good your content is. I'm just not. But if you're out there and you're talking to people and you're doing podcast G is one of the best ways to build that trust. It's called a parasocial relationship, which means people think they know you even though you don't know them, and they start to like you even though you have no idea who they are. But the way that happens psychologically is when they spend time with you and they hear you talk, and they can tell, because people aren't stupid. They can tell if you're full of crap, or they can tell if you're a scumbag, or they can tell if you're a cool guy who just is a normal, cool dude who has some information to share that they find valuable. They can tell that really easily, really quickly. And if you're in the latter category, a normal, cool dude with information to share that they find valuable, and they consume that information after 7, 8, 9 hours of consuming that information from you, you're going to feel like their neighbor. You're going to feel like their neighbor. And so when it does come time to say, look, man, by the way, I also want to set up a meeting about solar panels to help you save money on your energy bill, it becomes really easy for them to say, you know what, dude, let's hear it, because you're not a stranger anymore. You're their neighbor. And that's why Tim Kennedy, dude, I've never talked to him. I talked to, I have a lot of military guys in my network, but I've never talked to Tim. But people feel like they know him. They feel invested in him. They like his personality. They like his personal brand. So if he's associated with something, the trust just gets ratcheted up through the roof. And all of a sudden, it doesn't feel like they're buying from a stranger, even though they don't really know him. If they saw him out at Subway, he wouldn't know them, and they would just be fans, and then maybe they go up and talk to him. But when you're sitting there and you're watching the podcast or watching the YouTube videos or looking at his Instagram, like, this is my guy, Tim. I like this guy. He's the man. And that's why it's just the most powerful lever that you have, because it turns you into a neighbor. It takes you from a stranger into a neighbor, and it's so much easier to buy from a neighbor.
Yeah, I first heard that concept of the trust accelerators, right? Like the idea. Yeah, the idea of building trust, man, that's a big part of why I do the podcast and the YouTube, and, I'm trying to put out things and all that, just because, it's a different market now, man. Now that before you start a business and you would be like a brick and mortar style business, you'd be geographically locked in to whomever's around in that area. If you open up a store or a shop or something like that, right? You got to have inventory, right? And not all your inventory is going to sell.
Hard mode,
right? You got to pay for the lease to rent the place, and if you're not making enough you're not selling enough of your widgets and gadgets or whatever you're selling, it's hard mode, man, all day long. And then you're limited to geography, right? And this is one of the things that I love about the online business world, is that now you are entering in the global market because you're online, and you're selling something. You're selling your time, you're selling your knowledge, or your experience, your life lessons and all that, and you're packaging that into an offer. But you don't have to, the distribution is so much simpler because you have social media that you can borrow and you can leverage, right? Yeah. And it's free, and before, you think about like TV advertising, you had to buy, you spent like 10 G's or more to get like a 30-second spot on an infomercial at night, right? And now it's like you can create your own YouTube channel, and it's your show. This podcast is a show that I created, and it's free for me to post on. Like think about the power of that, But at the same time, because it opened it up to this global market, now the competition is more heavy, right? Like now you're competing with all these different people, and so what do you think causes a lot of these businesses that come out, man, to fail? Is it just they stop? Do they forget these basic principles? Do they forget about the idea that this is a long game and building a personal brand? Like, what have you seen?
You mean like online businesses?
Yeah, like online businesses that come in, man, they come in and it feels like they start buying ads, they do all this thing, and then they go out of business.
Yeah. I'll get to that. Okay. But in a long roundabout way. Yeah, first I'll caveat. Yeah. There's a lot of things that make local brick and mortar hard mode. Yeah. But there's a lot of things that offset that hard mode. One of them being, if you're in a store in a neighborhood, you're part of that neighborhood. You're part of that tribe. So you automatically have a trust advantage over somebody in New Delhi selling the exact same thing. Yeah. You just do. So that makes it easier. The other thing that makes it a little bit easier, that offsets some of the hard mode stuff. It is hard because you got the overhead, you got the inventory, you're usually selling for a lower ticket. It's just a lot of stuff. But it's easier to reach your market via advertising because you're competing with less people. You're not competing with everyone in the US, you're competing with the people in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or wherever you are. So there's some things that offset that. But the main thing that offsets it is that trust. And that I feel like they're part of my community. So I automatically grant them a certain measure of trust. And that's what you're building when you're building a brand online. And people just got to spend time with you. They just have to spend time with you. And we all have those guys that we grew up with. I was in a fraternity in college, and there's so many dudes in there who would rush the fraternity, and we'd have to give them a bid because they were a legacy or whatever. And we'd be like, this dude sucks. Because we only met him a couple times. We're like, this guy's an egg. This guy sucks. But then what happens when you spend more time with them? even if they really do suck, even if they're annoying, you start to like them. You start to have a little soft spot for them because they're part of your thing, man. And they're in your world and you're like, oh man, he's a dork, but he's our dork. He's our guy. And it's just because you spent time with him. It's just because you spent time with him. And that's what you're doing when you're building an online brand. Now, you can't be a total obnoxious idiot. Just like, you can't just be a YouTube channel of you just blowing a kazoo for 2 hours and being obnoxious. Like, people aren't gonna like that. So you have to have a certain amount of charisma and a certain amount of social skills to make it. But when people spend time with you, they feel like they know you, and they overlook the things that might have put them off about you at the very beginning. Like, oh, this guy is weird. He has a weird laugh. I don't know. I don't like this guy. Or he makes jokes that aren't funny, or he's whatever. When they're in your world for long enough, you start to like them and you start to trust them. And when you get to your question, G, about people falling off and quitting, I think it's usually an example of, there's a lot of things that could cause it, but you're right. Like the turnover, the burn rate is so strong, man. I know so many guys who I started with who have quit, and so many guys I started with who never really started. They're still sitting there 3 years, 4 years later being like, I'm thinking of I'm making my website, tinkering on my website. All right, bro. How much money has your website paid you? 0. But I think what happens is usually, like, probably the majority is one of two things. Either, and it's really, I guess it's the same thing. It's they aren't good enough. They whatever they say they can do, they burn enough people to where the bad word of mouth outweighs. Like, even a broken clock is right a couple times a day. Like, you could get a client who was just going to make it anyway, and they make it, and you think, I did that. Well, you didn't really do that. You might have played a little role, but not really. Yeah. So you need to have that consistency, and prove that this is something that more likely than not, I'm going to help people with. But I think people get to where they aren't doing that. Mm-hmm. And the bad word of mouth starts to really hurt them. And so then they're faced with a decision, is like, I need to get better at this. I really need to get better, or I'm not going to be able to keep doing this. And that is really hard. It's really hard. Like, it's leveling up. And every time you level up, the bosses get harder. It's just like a video game. Like, every time you get to that next level, you're like, oh, I made it. And then you look around, you're like, oh, dude, these bosses have an invincibility shield and they can breathe fire. I don't know how to fight them. And you got to learn, and you got to figure it out. And so most people will get to that level, and then they can't figure it out, or they don't figure it out, or they won't figure it out. And they either quit, or what's more common is they pivot and they go do something else. And they're like, that's too hard. I can take the same 2 or 3 tricks I know and apply it to a different thing. And I can get up to $5,000-$10,000 a month that way. And okay, I'll do that. And then they get to the same bosses again, and they're like, oh, I can't beat these bosses. And they go do it again in a different way, and package it up in a different way. And so they either just drop off and quit, or they never actually complete. They get to a level that they don't level up, and the levels go on forever. The level I'm currently at is, if it's level 1,000, well, there's 10 billion levels. So I'm never going to get all the way there. Nobody does. But you have to just commit to, there's going to be a point where I'm going to have a bottleneck, where I'm going to have a skill gap. And I'm going to know it if I'm honest with myself, because I get to this certain type of offer, the certain type of client, whatever, they're not succeeding. And there's that one thing that I knew if I knew how to do, they could do it, but it sounds hard. Do I want to really learn that? Do I want to level up? And faced with that decision, I think the easy way is to just go do something else. Go do something else. And that's why guys like get up at a plateau and then they just continue to move laterally. Or they just burn so many people that like their reputation is destroyed. And that's really unfortunate. Because I do respect people that are earnestly trying to do it. Yeah. I do. And you're not gonna be for everybody. There's always gonna be people who just, for whatever reason, it doesn't happen. They don't do what they need to do, or you can't communicate right with them, or there's just something that's not working. And that's part of it. But the sad reality is, like, if you have too many of those, bad word of mouth travels way faster than good word of mouth.
Yeah, it does.
Way faster. So that's another reason I tell guys to, like, think about it. What if you just went out and you did make a bunch of content about some solution you had, some offer for a dentist office or whatever, and you're like, I'm going to help these guys do this, but you weren't really good at it. Well, what happens when your ad really works? And the next thing you know, you got 100 dentists being like, I'll take that thing. And then you got to deliver it, and you aren't good enough. And then they all go tell everyone they know, is like, don't hire this bozo. He screwed us up. Whereas if you had actually taken it the right path and gone to one dentist and been like, look, man, I'm trying this new thing. I want to do it I want to make it really easy for you to say yes. So I'm even willing to do it for free. Can I try it? And you build it up that way. That's the way to do it. And that'll give you the confidence to know I can solve these problems. And yeah, there's going to be more problems later. You're going to have to figure those out later. But at least at the beginning, I can knock these 4 or 5 things out of the park 99 times out of 100. And that's where you have the foundation of your business.
The entrepreneurial mind, man, the shiny object syndrome is so real,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so real.
And I like that you said that once it gets hard, these business owners, like the boss gets a little too hard to fight. Yeah. So they go and they build another business to that same point again, right? And then they get to that boss again. They're like, oh, man, I've been here before. I can't beat this dude. So let me go start another one and start another. And they repeat this cycle. And what I want people to see is that there's a difference between that type of entrepreneur versus the one that just fails, right? Like the one that has a failure. Because, the first time that I even started this whole alpha dad thing, like, dude, this is a complete joke. Like I created, and you've done this. I created a course thinking that that's what they needed and this and that, and crickets, bro, nothing. I created this fancy landing page, this video sales letter. I was all proud of myself. I'm like watching the video. I'm like, man, this is kind of good, Got all these graphics coming in and all that. Yeah. And it sucked. Did I go back and watch that now? I'm so embarrassed. But and so the failure, right? Like there's a failure, but what I didn't do is I didn't leave the niche. I knew that I wanted to work with dads. I knew that I wanted to talk about family leadership. I just didn't have my avatar dialed in. I didn't have the offer dialed in. I didn't have all these components. And, there was things pulling me. They're like, oh, maybe Amazon FBA or, drop shipping or all these, like all the stuff, right, that you see in the online entrepreneurship world that were and I tried some of those things and it completely bonked, bro. Like it was horrible. And when I landed on it, I was like, okay, I know this is where my heart is. This is where I want to pour in. This is where I feel that I can be of value. And I just stuck with it. Now it's been 4 years sticking with the same kind of brand and the same niche. And every year, every month, every conversation like this, I refine it. I change it. I dial it in a little bit more. I beat a new boss, and it's that concept of outlasting. And you've been on Ryan Mickler's show. Right. Yeah. Order of Man. He's a good dude. I haven't met him myself, but I know a lot of guys that know him, and he's been doing the whole dad thing for like 10 years, and I've seen him from like when he started to where he is now and the progression, his growth and all that. And he's built a brand out of that, and built this growing, but he's outlasting, he's just going, man. He just, no matter what hits him, he keeps going. And that's what I want you, if you're listening to this, I want you to think about that, is that it is a long game if you're getting into this. It's not a short-term, like instant gratification. You can have quick wins and make a good amount of money, up front, and you can hit it out of the park if you're doing it right, and you avoid a lot of the mistakes that me and Harrison have made. That he's giving you. He's giving you game on this to avoid those mistakes. But just think about it in the long term. Don't think about it in the short term in this instant gratification type of thing, because it's not, man. Like you want to outlast, you want to keep going, and you want to learn and continue beating those bosses as you reach new levels. So yeah, I can tie that, I can hammer that home with a story about Ryan, actually. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's the man. Go give him a follow and listen to his podcast. Is fire, dude.
Yeah, so Order of Man, guys, is awesome.
Yeah. So what you're talking about though, like play the long game. I'd say a twin thing about that is know the game you're playing. Know, like, I'm in this. If you have something that's validated enough, which means like people buy it and they stay and they like it, and they bite again or whatever. That to me is enough. So if you have something like that, the worst thing you can do is start comparing yourself to people who are doing something similar, but are farther ahead. And my very first thing, which was an embarrassing thing, was really, I didn't know Ryan at the time, and I didn't know about his men's development community. But the thing I launched was actually really similar to what he's built. And he's been building it for 7-8 years. And he charges, I mean, you can go find out what he charges. He's making a lot of good money out of it and changing a lot of guys' lives.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that at the time, but I was like, it's a men's development community. I'm going to build something like that. Subscription. I like that. Recurring revenue. Cool. And I started out of the gates charging $5 a month, which was a big mistake. Hard mode. Big mistake. But I struggled with it for months and months and months, and got it up to, the most I ever got it up to was about $3,000 MER for me after like 8-9 months. And then, and that's when I first became aware of like Ryan's stuff. And we started following each other on Instagram. We chat every now and then. I looked at his thing. I'm like, dude, he's got 1,000 members and he's charging go look it up.
Yeah.
Run the numbers.
Yeah.
I don't want to blow up his business, but if you're curious, you can find out. And I was like, this dude is doing what I'm doing, except 100 levels better.
Yeah.
And I sit there, my thing I've been working on for 6 months. I'm like, this guy's killing me. What a stupid way to look at it. He'd been doing it for 8 years.
Yeah.
He'd been doing it for years, and I've been doing it for 6 months. Yeah. And of course he's going to be light years ahead of me. Of course he is. But I fell into that trap of like, dang, I'm never going to get there. Look at what he's got. And I'm struggling here to sell. He's selling it for 10 times what I'm selling it for. What am I doing wrong? And I convinced myself that it was the wrong thing. Now that was, I wound it down or pivoted it back in 22 or whatever. Finally quote, gave up. But I sometimes think if I had just kept doing it, now I'd be 4 years into it, and I probably would be somewhere close to that level, not at his level, because he's gained years of experience in the meantime too. Yeah. But I quit. I quit because I compared myself. I quit because it was hard. All the stuff we just said. I got to a level where I was like, there's people beating my ass. Like, what am I going to do? And I pivoted. Now, what I'm doing now, I've pivoted a few times, and that's how I also get the shiny penny thing. Yeah. But finally, I learned that lesson of what I'm doing now is what works, and I'm going to keep doing it. And that's the only thing I'm doing now, which is so freaking refreshing. But like G was just saying, if you're listening to this, learn from us, man. Like, yeah, it was working. It was working slow, and I was making a lot of mistakes, but I could have leveled up. I could have sped it up, and I could have stuck with it. And then maybe I'd be at a certain level by now with that original product. But I was looking around, and I was like, there's dudes beating me. Now, of course, they're going to freaking be beating me. Of course, they've been doing it for. It's like if you're a high school basketball player and you're looking at 1991 Michael Jordan. Like, I don't care how good you are. He's going to smoke you. He's going to smoke you because you just hadn't been playing as long. It doesn't matter. Like, however old Kobe was in 91, he was probably 15 or whatever. Like, of course, my MJ would have smoked him. Yeah. But give him a few years. You can close the gap. But a lot of us aren't patient. And so that's when we start looking around. Well, what else can I do? What else will work faster, better, more? So I fell into that. I've gotten out of it. But hopefully that story is useful to people listening to this who might be feeling the same thing.
Yeah, it's that compounding of skills and experience, man, that people don't take note of. You know, that's actually happening. You know, I like that you mentioned that Ryan, you know, that even if you would have stuck with it, Ryan would have still had another 4 years.
He would have kept going. Yeah.
He would have kept going. You know, he's still stacking it up. Right. So, and yeah, man, the comparison of like, we're on chapter 2, right? They're on chapter 10.
Yep.
It's different. You know, we're at different stages, and that's okay. Like there's no rush, man. Like you got this. There's going to be a segment of people that you can speak to because you have your own unique experiences and lessons and your own unique personality and all that. And there's going to be people that Ryan can speak to and I can speak to. Like, you know, once you understand that, then you can create what you have in your mind, what you envision. You can create it and refine it and make it better. And man, that's why I really love this entrepreneurship game, bro, because
It's so fun. It's the
fun,
best thing
man.
ever.
It's so fun. Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, brother. I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to hit you with one of the last questions I always ask my guests here, which is, in your opinion, if you had to narrow it down to a few traits, what makes a dad a good family leader?
A dad, a good family leader. Humility, and I'll define what I mean by that. And then a commitment to self-improvement. I really think that's it. I think so. Starting with the self-improvement, you have to understand that you are never finished. You are never finished. And the second you think you're a finished product, you're done. You're right. You are finished. You're through. The second you think you're finished, you're done. Your life is a never-ending project of self-improvement. You are always, I mean, until I'm 9, hopefully I live to 100, I'm still going to be working. I'm still going to be, whatever I can do at the gym, I'm going to be doing it. Whatever, maybe I can't be running a business the way I am now, but you better believe I'm going to be on boards and consulting until they got to put a diaper on me and put me in a home. Well, you're just never done. And I think that's a big thing that really holds guys back, is they get to 30, 40 years old and they're like, this is as good as it's going to get. And if that's what you believe, then you're right. Whatever you got now, if that's what you believe, you're right. This is as good as it's going to get. But as long as you keep fighting, and you know there's still chips on the table. I can still crawl. I can still improve. I can still advance. If you have that mentality within you, not only will you advance, but you'll transfer that to your kids, and they'll see that, and they'll be like, "Look, Dad, maybe they're college age, and you're 60, and they're like, Dad's still out here lifting weights. Dad's still out here boxing, taking boxing lessons or jujitsu lessons, whatever you're doing." I'm like, damn, that is badass. Because how many 60-year-old guys do that? Almost none. Because they've all got to a certain point, like, I'm finished getting better. I'm finished developing. So you have to understand, you have to commit that I'm never a finished project. I'm never, ever, ever a finished project. And I'm going to keep improving until the day that I draw my very last breath. And then the humility side, one thing that's really hard, because I think humility, I think about humility tactically. I think in some situations it's valuable, some situations it's not. And when it's really, really valuable is when people already hold you on a pedestal. So if people already really look up to you and you show a little humility, that's going to go a long way in strengthening the bond that they feel with you and the trust that they feel with you. And imagine, like, I don't know, who's that? Michael Jordan. Like, if you were, because he's like the only celebrity I can think of. I don't follow celebrities.
Hey, I mean, he's pretty up there,
he's
bro.
The best, man.
Yeah.
But think about this. How powerful would it be if you walked up to MJ, you randomly ran into him, and he was like, "Hey, man, come over and talk to me for a minute. I just want to let you know, here's a couple things I've been struggling with. Like, I'm not perfect, and I just want to let you know, like, no matter what you're going through, just keep going." Like, whatever, like, humble statement interaction you could have with him. How freaking powerful that is. Holy God. MJ told me that. He could have told me to eat shit. He could have told me to kick bricks. Like, he could tell me anything, and I'd be like, well, it's MJ, so I forgive it. But imagine if he was just like cool as hell and humble as hell. That's the strength of humility when you're on a pedestal. But if you look at the inverse of it, if you're a nobody and you're down at the bottom, humility becomes a liability. Mm-hmm. Because if you make self-deprecating jokes about yourself, you're like, I'm just someone, I'm just getting, like, people are like, yeah, you are nobody. You're nobody, and they ignore you. So you have to think about humility a little bit tactically. I don't think it's something that it always applies to every single person in every situation. But when you're a dad, that's a pedestal, man. That's a pedestal. And I think one of the most powerful moments that I share, I try to do this consciously with my kids, is talk about when I messed up. Talk about, because you're Superman, dude. And eventually they're going to realize that you're not. So don't hold on to that and think I'm going to maintain this facade forever. Like, of course I'm not Superman, but I'm pretty good. I'm better than most people, I think, at a lot of things. But they see me that way too, which is why when I can have moments of, look, this is what I did wrong. This is why I was wrong. And this is what I'm doing to make it better. That hits so much harder. So I think if you combine those two traits of, I'm just going to always keep getting better. I'm going to keep getting better. And I'm going to use humility in a tactical, tactful way to increase that bond with my kids. Because I don't want them thinking I'm Superman. Because the longer they think you're Superman, the harder the fall is when they realize you're not.
Yeah.
And because they've built you up. I want them to see the human me who's comfortable under owning things where I mess up. And then I want them to see me working every day, because I know I'm never finished. And the second I think I'm finished, I'm right. And that's the end.
Dude, that's so powerful. My mentor used to tell me, I'd rather wear out than rust out. You know, and he has that. He's in his 60s now, and he has that tenacity of just like, I'm just gonna go, man. Ain't nobody telling me that I'm retired.
Yeah.
You know, that I'm done improving myself, that I'm done being tactful with my humility. Like no one's gonna. Yeah, dude, I love that. That's awesome, brother. Yeah, bro, man. Dude, thank you for this.
Hey,
this is awesome.
Thank you, G. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, bro, absolutely. I'm down.
1, 2, 3 actions I didn't meet. 4, 5, 6 fear and silence begin to mix. 7, 8, 9 the thought of being emotionless started taking over my mind.